important that we identify the codes and conventions of our chosen genre. The genre we've chosen is gangster. There are many things that can be included in a gangster film that can place it into the genre. This is because there is such a variety of films within this particular category. No two gangster films will have exactly the same elements to it, although they may be similar. It is different to many other genres in the way that viewers can have a different outlook on each film. This could be when identifying good and bad characters. To get an understanding of the genre and the codes and conventions that are needed to classify a film into the gangster genre, we have watched many openings to films that fall into our category. One of these films that really relates to the one that we would like to create in our opening is Goodfellas. The scene contains three men in a car. A group of people all aiming towards the same goal is a key convention to many gangster films. This is present in the opening scene of this film. There is no non-diegetic sound in the opening. The scene is set perfectly without the need for added music that does not belong to the world of the film. The only thing that can be heard is the noises from the car, the men talking, and a strange noise coming from the boot. This gives the opening an element of mystery and keeps the viewer interested. We plan to do something similar with the start of our opening. The camera angle is a medium shot of the driver with both passengers visible. It is natural for the viewer to assume that the men in the car have a rivalry or issue to resolve with another person or group much like theirs. Towards the end of the scene, the men discover a person who they thought to be dead in the boot of their car that was still alive, but in a very bad state. A hostage situation is another convention of gangster film. The best example of this is where one person is completely outnumbered and usually being held to extract some sort of information. The other reason that they would be in this situation is to get at another group or person to get something from them. We plan to use this concept and develop it however we see fit. Another film that can compare with the one that we would like to achieve is Public Enemies. The opening starts in silence. The date in which the film is set then appears, followed by a brief description of what is happening in that particular time period. There is another idea that we would like to consider for our film. The scene takes place in and around an isolated prison. This prison is located miles away from anything else. The first thing that the viewer sees is a line of prisoners being marched in one direction. Due to the mise-en-scène, it is easy for the viewer to identify the people on the screen as prisoners. This is because they are all wearing the iconic uniforms, black and white striped all over. This is made from very basic materials. Also, the diegetic sound helps to identify the men as prisoners. These noises that can be heard are the stamping of feet and the rustling of chains. The scene isn't set until a few seconds into the shot. This is when the camera changes from close-up of the prisoner's feet and faces to a long shot of inside the prison. In this shot, 4 guards visible. They have authority over the prisoners. The shot backs up the viewer's assumptions that the scene is taking place within a prison setting. Prisons are another key convention of gangster movies. This is because a lot of violence and law-breaking often happens in these films, sometimes resulting in a member of the gang or all of the gang being arrested. However, prisoners usually appear more towards the middle and end of films within this genre and not at the beginning. Moments later in the scene, a car pulls up outside the facility. A new prisoner is being brought in. A lot of focus is put on this one man as he is being escorted inside. This gives the viewer the assumption that he will be the main character in the film. We need to consider that when making our film, the main character must stand out or be introduced in a different way to the other characters. After the main character is seen for the first time, the scene progresses into the next part of the introduction. This is when a whole group of prisoners escape with the identified main character. This sets up the whole film as a chase to recapture the criminals and the main character. This is another thing that we must consider when making our own opening scene. We mustn't make it too conclusive. The next film opening that I've looked at is The Departed. This opening is full of small clips of violent activity in a city. The scene is set by the viewer where the film is set. This is done by using titles on a blank screen with no sound present. These short clips are shown from a range of fistfights to vandalism to streets lined with police officers. The picture quality is poor and the camera is shaky, which gives hints to the viewer that it is being filmed by someone locally and unprofessionally. The whole of the opening sequence is being voiced over by someone who has a stereotypical voice of a gangster who is intimidating and has great power. These short clips of violence in the city with the voiceover give the assumption to the viewer that the man who is talking has great authority and has a fear factor within the city. After the clips, the voice within the city, there is a high-angle shot of the entire city which sets the scene for the whole film. Once this happens, the camera follows the man as he walks. We can see that the person who is talking, but we cannot see what he looks like due to the shadows created by the environment, which looks like a garage. Showing the character that is very intimidating with a lot of authority over people is something that we wish to involve in our attempt to make a film of this genre. The last opening that we have focused on is Layer Cake. In this opening, there is a voiceover all the way through. This voice is clearly British, which gives hints about the setting being somewhere in Britain. The voice is speaking about all of the different time periods that he has lived in. These periods are filled with crime. As he describes what the crimes are, there are pictures of them on the screen. He describes a period where it is very hectic and full of violence in the streets. The next period that he describes is the 80s. This era contained great focus on peace and love. Something that he came up with was drugs. This clip outlines a group of people in a small space, all in bright clothing, smoking various substances. They all have long hair and the environment is extremely decorated. The actions that these people involved are, these actions that the people are being involved with often result in them being arrested. It seems as though the drug craze has taken over the country. This is because the camera pans across different packages on the shelves that are all different kinds of illegal drugs developed by the brand FC UK. This selection of films has given us many key codes and conventions that we can use for our particular film.